Welcome everyone that is joining us.
It's not live streaming yet.
So all of the staff, all of the board, and any guests that are listening, to move right into approval. Joining us.
Mary, you're freezing.
All of the board and any guests that are listening can move right in.
And somebody has the audio on that's listening to the live stream. Jill, is that you that has the audio on while you're listening to the live stream? There's a 2-minute delay on the live stream. Jill, are we good to go? Tina, can you ask Jill if we're good to go?
Yes, we're good to go.
Very good.
Yes.
Mary, I'm sorry to interrupt. Please proceed with introductions.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is introductions of directors, staff, and guests. I'll begin with myself. I'm Mary Creek from Hagerstown, Maryland. I'm a dairy farmer. And welcome everyone.
Great, and thank you so much, Mary. We do have a new member today, so I would ask that people maybe give a little longer introduction of their background. And of course, I'm Steve McHenry, Executive Director of MARBIDCO. I know all of you. And I did want to also point out that we have a vacancy on the board as Faith Elliott Rossi has departed after 15 distinguished years of service. She decided to step down at the end of her term on June 30th. So the governor's appointments office is looking for a replacement now. So with that, Madam Chair, I'm going to ask John to introduce himself, and then we'll just go around the horn.
Hi, I'm John. I'm the Vice Chair of MARBIDCO. I am a licensed forester residing in Frederick, Maryland. I work for the Davy Tree Expert Company, and I'm a retired professor from Allegheny College with a focus on forestry and natural resources.
Paul, I see you next.
I'm Paul Geringer, and I'm a faculty member at the University of Maryland.
What do you do, Paul?
I do ag law outreach, and
Very
I have
good.
limited voice today.
Okay. Charlotte.
Morning, Charlotte Davis, Executive Director of the Rural Maryland Council. We're an independent state agency located in the Maryland Department of Agriculture.
Great. Mark.
Mark Krebs, Executive Vice President, Chief Financial Officer of Farmers and Merchants Bank in Upperco, Maryland, and I grew up in a agricultural family, dairy farming, etc.
Great. Jenny.
Hello, Jenny Kim, Associate Dean and Associate Director for University of Maryland Extension. So Extension is we provide research-based education to public in major 4 program areas: agriculture and food systems, environment, natural resources, family and consumer sciences, and 4-H and youth development. We have over 30 locations around the state and each county and Baltimore City office. I have been with the University of Maryland since 2000.
Great. Sarah. You're on.
I'm Sarah. I'm sorry, I'm back. I'm Sarah O'Haron. I'm one of the founders and owners of Black Ankle Vineyards, which is a vineyard and winery in Frederick, Maryland.
Don Darnell, who's one of our original founding directors, who now has the Longevity Award.
Yeah, it's always nice to be the older member. My name is Don Darnall, and I'm the Executive Director of the Maryland Food Center Authority. Our primary development is in Jessup. It's the food center, and we have the Maryland Wholesale Produce Market, and now what we call the Maryland Market Center. which is a diverse market of seafood and brewing and other things. And I had an uncle that was a cattle farmer, and I used to every fall go up and pick all of his corn for his cow. So
I did not know that about you, Don. After 16, 17 years, I learned something. And let's see, I think Victoria, our newest member, you want to say hello? You're on mute, Victoria. Looking for that mute button, it can be challenging.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right, I'm here. I'm Victoria Brown. I was born and raised on a cattle farm and a tobacco farm. We had 60 acres of Black Angus cattle, and we had 100 acres of tobacco on the Wycomico River in southern Maryland, Charles County. My degree is in financial management and business, and second in accounting. I worked for the federal government for 39 years for the Navy. And of those 39 years that I worked, 9.5 of them with my own company, part owner of Logistics Support Incorporated out of Crystal City, Virginia, and worked for the Navy there too. And then since then, in the last 10 years, almost 11 years now, I guess, I am the female owner of Shop Cove Aquaculture, LLC. I've put over 1 billion baby oysters overboard into the Chesapeake Bay and its tributaries. We have 350 acres of leased bottom that we plant, and I think that's enough. I sit on a couple of councils. I sit on the Aquaculture Council for the governor, and I sit on now this is my new appointment from Governor Westmore to sit on this board, and I'm also on a working group board with the University of Maryland Horns Point lab.
She's also very involved with the Maryland Watermen's Association, and she's sitting in our seafood harvesting and production seat. So welcome, Victoria. Glad to have you. And last but not least, the Deputy Secretary of Agriculture.
Welcome, Victoria. Steve Conley. I'm the Deputy Secretary at Maryland Department of Agriculture.
Thank you.
Steve also sits on our Loan Review Committee, which is one of our most active committees, and appreciate his service for several years on that committee. All right, let's introduce the staff. Tina, you want to start?
Sure. Hi, Tina Wilkins here, Senior Accounting Coordinator at MARBIDCO. Good to see everyone.
Allison?
Hi, everyone. Allison Rowe, Financial Programs Officer.
Stacy?
Hi, everyone. Stacy Kabopsik, Senior Programs Manager.
And Jill?
Hi, everyone. Jill Kabatko, Communications Associate.
Very good. Well, that concludes the introductions, Madam Chair. We can move on to the minutes.
All right, let's review the minutes quickly, and we'll entertain a motion for approval if you so choose.
Everybody good with the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carried. The next item on our agenda is an update on our staffing and operating budget. We're going to turn it over to Steve and Tina.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm thrilled to report that we reached a historic milestone on the last day of the fiscal year on June 30th. We reached and exceeded the $100 million mark. So that was an accomplishment, I think, for this organization that started out with very little funding a little over 16 years ago. And now we have 18 programs and are going strong. So congratulations to all that have contributed to that success over the year. We're about 1,230 some projects altogether. And we'll get into some detail on that in a minute. Wanted to just quickly tell you where we are staffing wise. I think, as you all know, we've been quite short staffed since the conclusion of the pandemic. We were, I think, as those of you that have been around a while know, we were extremely busy during the pandemic. We closed shop, everybody went home and worked endlessly in their home offices during the duration of the time that the office was closed. I don't think we'd ever worked harder, and then it just kept going. And since then, we've had the retirement of two of our senior loan officers, one a year and a half ago, and our most experienced commercial lending officer retired in May. So we've been concerned about that. We had an authorized staff last year of 11 people and on the team here, and we've never had more than 9 at any one point during the year. And as you will see in a few minutes, we had a record-setting year in terms of number of projects and dollar volume. So kudos to the team for all of their accomplishments over the last year. It's a real testament. And I will tell you that since Betsy's retirement in May, we've added a very well qualified new staff person, in Brittany Rawlings, who joins the team as a financial program specialist. And just yesterday, we've hired another gentleman who's going to be joining our team in mid-August as a financial program specialist. So come August, we will be staffed with 10 staff. And I'm really thrilled about that. I think we've got a great bench that we're bringing on board, and would like to have a little more capacity with very seasoned commercial underwriting staff. May try to recruit somebody part-time for that role, but I think we're poised now to be in a good place. And as the year progresses, as these new staff gain experience, this time next year, I think we'll be really where we want to be. At least that's my expectation today. So I have budgeted for that. You'll see that in the FY24 budget later in the meeting. So good news on the staffing front, good news on the performance of the organization last year. I want to thank again everybody for their outstanding efforts, including our loan committee and other committee members for their work. In terms of the let's start with the programming activity report. I think Tina was going to try to put that on the screen for you all to see. We did send it out to you.
Jill, can you enable share, please?
Say again?
I asked Jill to enable sharing. I can't share yet.
Oh, does Jill need to give that to you?
Yeah, hold on. I got it. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay.
So here is a summary of the activity from the year just concluded. In terms of our core loan programs, you can see there that we had just about $10 million worth of requests. We funded a total of just under $9 million. We would have had a record in this category this year, except that we had one farm purchase loan on the Eastern Shore withdraw 2 weeks before the end of the fiscal year. So we would have come in right at $9.5 million, but we didn't quite exceed the record from the prior year in that category, but nevertheless, a very strong year. And as I think you all know, our Mr. Biff program has been out of service since early May. So we would have definitely exceeded that number had that program been still in service. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Scrolling down to the specialty loan programs, we did, I can't see it, Tina. We did 861,000, 40 loans were funded. A lot of those loans were in our new Waterman's Micro loan program. I believe we are at 31 or 32 micro loans that we funded last year with new funding that the General Assembly has provided for us. And we actually had a total request of 62 loans in that category. We had a number of the Waterman's loans. Some of the folks were ineligible. We had a number of people that applied, were approved, and declined to take the money. I think they were surprised that they actually had to buy the equipment that they were being funded for. So they decided not to take the loan. And again, with our specialty loan programs, very often there is a principal forgiveness feature at the end of the loan for good repayment performance. And this is one of those programs that does feature some principal forgiveness at the end. So interesting to see how that program's going. Been very busy. I want to thank Daniela Merkel, who's been overseeing that program for us for the last year. She's listening in on the live stream. If we can scroll down to the core grant programs, we funded 31 requests last year. The dollar volume was only 32,000. Typically, we budget and have requests in the $250,000 to $300,000 range. And for some reason, some of the programs were not as active this year. And the programs that were open were, we only had small grant awards. For example, we have the USDA Value Added Producer Grant Matching Grant Program, and we only had 2 successful applicants for us, and only one of them was funded for, I believe, about $5,500. So a very small grant award for a program that features typically much larger grants with much larger matching grants up to $25,000 from MARBIDCO. So interesting year in the lack of dollar volume, but we did fund a number of grants. As you can see there, a number of them were small grants, including for the Future Harvest, CASA, beginning farmer graduates in level 2, level 3 programming there. So grants of $1,000 or less for those Future Harvest, beginning farmer graduates. And then in terms of the next generation program, we have the 2, both the easement option purchase program, that's the original next gen program, as well as the newer small acreage next gen program. We had 9 funded applications for $3 million. And Allison's going to go over that a little bit more. So all in this year, we approved just over $14 million in projects, and we still have about 4.8 million of that 14 million left to disperse. And that's very typical. It can take sometimes months for a loan to actually close and then actually disperse. So that's not at all unusual. Can we go to the next slide, Tina?
I just clicked on it. Did it automatically show the screen, or do I have to stop?
I see it.
You see it? Great.
Yep. So here is a summary of the year just passed. And I'm pleased to tell you that revenues came in over budget. As you will see here, we had budgeted $18.7 million in income, and we took in $21.5 million. And where was most of that new money coming from? Well, I highlighted for you loan principal repayments. And we talk every year at budget time about loans that pay off early. And we had a number that paid off early again this year, totaling almost $2 million. So that is where the lion's share of that extra income came from, as you can see in the highlighted line there. All the state appropriations for the various core programs and specialty grant and next generation programs came in as projected. We're actually earning money on our Maryland Market Money account this year, whereas previously we were earning very little. So you see there a 5,500% increase in that line. Program income came in better than projected. So all in, very good year for revenues. If you look at the operational expenses, Tina will scroll down a little bit. You'll see that we came in under budget with the operational expenses. Personnel was under budget. Again, we had budgeted for 11, we only had 9. And so that explains why we came in under budget with that. Contractual services was up. We had about $10,000 in extra legal expense this year. We reimbursed the Department of Commerce for the services of our Assistant Attorney General, Manachi Nasafor, who does a great job for us. And we had a lot of extra work for him this year, both with collateralized loan closing work, as well as he was been extremely helpful on the development of the new Mr. Biff loan participation program. So we are going to budget a little more money in that category next year. I don't think we'll have quite the expense there next year, but you never know. So we did a little more sponsorship too last year, so that explains why the outreach, promotion, travel, training budget was up a little bit. So we're going to budget a little bit more there in that category next year. So those are the operating expenses, and then on the programmatic expenditures side, we had budgeted $9.5 million for the core program loans. So we actually approved just under $9 million. In terms of the various specialty loan programs, including the two aquaculture programs and the Waterman's micro loan program, you can see there we had budgeted $1.2 million and we had expenditures of $861,000. In terms of the specialty grant programs, this includes the aggregation grant program that we're receiving a special appropriation for $435,000 annually. And we have not awarded all of those funds. So we're carrying some of that over into the next year, as you will see in a minute. But anyway, we had $1.2 million worth of specialty grant expenditures last year. And then with the core grants, we made a total of $122,000 in grants, but we had a very large budget last year, $390,000. That's probably larger than usual. Normally, we've budgeted between 10 and 12% of our core program appropriation in that category. The core program appropriation was $2.3 million last year. We're going to fortunately receive more money this coming year, but I'm only budgeting $230,000 in the budget you're going to see in a few minutes for next year. And then finally, in the next gen category, we had budgeted 3.8, and we had approved this, I believe it was 9 next gen projects for $3 million. So we ended up carrying over $6 million, which will flow into next year's budget, except for funds that we hold, the specially designated funds, which we hold in reserve. So that's an overview of FY23. You can see there in the footnote, nearly half of the surplus came from early loan repayments, principally from the Mr. Biff loan program. And then about a little over a third of that balance comes from restricted use or dedicated specialty funds. Happy to take any questions if there are any. Seeing none, Tina? We can move on to the next one. You can see here, we've, in some years, we've given you a long list of every project that's paid off early. We decided to condense several pages into just one simple presentation of the data. And you can see there in terms of the number of loans paid in full, since fiscal 10, the total number has been 220. 30 of them were in the last fiscal year, and then we had a great deal more in the years, 2 years prior. Part of that was due to the very low interest rate environment and people able to refinance their loans. But that trend was continuing last year. Tina, if you'll scroll down a little more, you can see here the categories of the loan types that paid off in full over the years, and you can see there the Mr. Biff program leads the way. And then in terms of dollars, and this is a number that's very interesting, we had about $1.8 million in dollar volume that paid off early beyond what was otherwise due to be paid off. So, and you can see the year before, we were double that. So we've been fortunate to be collecting a lot of loan principal funds early as people are able to either refinance or they have expansion projects and are able to refinance their existing debt, or in some cases the loans are just being paid off on time. Any questions about early loan payoff? Tina, can you jump back to the loan loss reserve and average loan portfolio document? Did you have that up?
I don't think I pulled that one up, Steve.
All right. Well, we'll go to this one. Maybe we can find that one in a minute.
Steve, this is Mark. Steve, this is Mark. How does the, I know in looking at projections going out several years, you know, we take into account early prepayments, I believe.
Yes, we do.
So I mean, this is obviously something that we're all experiencing, that, you know, things are going to go slower because the rates they can refinance into are higher. So is that significantly impacting our projections, or is that something you're going to get to later in the meeting?
I'm going to get to that. I have one of my, complicated spreadsheets projecting out to fiscal 2030 that includes an early loan payoff figure of about 1.2 million, which is 50% of the average of the last 5 years.
Okay.
So you'll see that when we take up the FY24 operating budget.
Okay, great.
All right, here's a look back at the last 8 fiscal years. We sort of picked 2016 as when we thought we were a fully mature operation after being in business for 7 or 8 years. And so this gives you a snapshot as to how we did last year and then how it compares to the prior years. In terms of just the core loans, these are all the collateralized loans which we make from our core programs appropriation and funds that revolve from that. You can see there that we didn't quite have a record year in terms of dollar volume last year. And in terms of number of projects, actually fiscal 2020 was the largest year with 40, but it was a very, very good year. And we ended the year a little early with the Mr. Biff program going temporarily out of service. But you can see how we did there and how that compares to the prior year, and how much commercial lender leverage we got from those investments. And just if you're curious, over those 8 years, the average loan has been about $233,000. And we're doing about $6.1 million a year on average. But you can see there, during the height of the pandemic in fiscal 2020, we only did $2 million in core program loans, whereas in 3 fiscal years, 2017, 2022, and 2023, $9 million or nearly $9 million in loan volume. So it averages out to about 6.1 million over that period. For those who've been around a while, we've used $6 million as sort of our target annualized core program expectation. But of course it varies, but that's the number we've been using for several years. And you'll see that in that spreadsheet projection I was talking about a minute ago. We scroll down to the specialty loan programs. You can see how we did last year, and then as a comparison to the prior 7 years. 40 specialty loans. Again, the lion's share of those were either Waterman's microloans or Shellfish Aquaculture loans, totaling 861,500. We've been averaging about 10 a year, so the Waterman's microloan program is going to continue to drive that number higher over the coming year. The average loan in the specialty category is $44,000. And then if you look at all loans from both the core and the specialty category, you can see there that we did $9.8 million in loan volume, which is a record. And the number of projects at 64 is also a record for MARBIDCO. So again, kudos to the staff and the various committees that have worked on those projects over the past year. Looking at incentive grants, we track those as well. All in from all categories of incentive grants, we made or funded 55 projects last year with a total of $1.258 million. Again, a record. You can see there, if you're curious, that the average we have done over the preceding years has been about 400,000, with the average grant award being 12,000. Of course, the grants could be much smaller and they can be a little larger as well. Next page, Tina. Looking at the two next generation programs, again, starting in fiscal 28 with the original next gen easement option purchase program. We funded a total of 9 projects last year for the $3 million, which I highlighted previously. And we leveraged about 1.4 million in commercial lender funding for those beginning farm purchases. And Allison's on the line. She's going to talk a little bit more about the next gen program in a minute. In terms of all financial programs, we funded 128 projects last year for a total of $14 million. So again, a record year for all financial programs. And then we don't just make and approve new loans and grants and next gen projects. We also have to service all the loans that we have. And we have approximately 300 booked loans, including 143 Mr. Biff loans. And just because you make a loan doesn't mean you're done. Some borrowers have issues. Some borrowers need loan modifications, or they need some sort of forbearance, or and then thankfully some loans pay off. All of that takes work on the part of the staff. So we track that for you so you can see how hard we're working. And in terms of other financial program activities, we had another record year. Tina, you jumped ahead a little fast there. All in, we had 95 other transactions that we had to deal with last year, other than the new loan and grant approvals. So if you look at the whole thing now, Tina was jumping down there. We funded or worked on 223 transactions last year. Again, a record for us, not including the 2 pandemic years, which again were extremely busy years for us, with a large number of federally funded pandemic adjustment relief type grants. We've excluded those, except we put them in here so you could see them. They would distort the averages if we included them in the information that was presented above. Happy to take any questions about anything I've just talked about there. Tina, were you able to find the loan loss reserve? Never mind, I'll just tell everybody. The loan loss reserve as of June 30th was 3.06%. Tina, you can take that down. And which is, I think, lower than you've seen in the past. I will tell you that our actual loan losses over the last 16 years have been less than 2%, about 1.7%. Our target as a small business economic development finance agency is between 5 and 7% loan losses. So we are actually doing quite well. As we've discussed off and on over the years, but we think we're taking the appropriate amount of credit risk in our lending. So I'm not recommending that we do anything differently relative to how we're approaching the deals that we're approving. And then in terms of the average loan portfolio interest rate, this is a metric we track because you all have set a target of having a loan interest rate across all loans booked in our current portfolio at 4%. And in the months preceding the start of the great pandemic, our average portfolio interest rate was 4.25%. Today it is 3.65%. So we're below the average we set. And the reason why it's lower than it was 3 years ago was during the pandemic, as interest rates were hitting the lowest in generation. We ended up lowering the interest rates for many of our collateralized loans. So that had the effect of lowering the average rate. In addition, the Mr. Biff interest rate during the pandemic was 3%, and more recently was 3.25% in the first step. So I will tell you that we have 143 Mr. Biff loans in the portfolio. And over the next 10 years, as those loans continue to perform, as those loans hit the second and third steps, the second step is typically 4.5% after 3 years. And then after 6 years, the third step is 5.75%. So as over time, as those loans continue to perform, our average interest rate will go up. So that's the good news. And then with the new Mr. Biff loan participation program, you all have set the interest rate to start at 4.25%. So while we're below the target now, we're going to be heading in a trajectory of hitting 4%. I can't tell you whether it's 2 years from now or 3 years from now or 4 years from now, but we will be, that number should be inching up. And if it's not, then we need to figure out why. But I do anticipate that it'll be inching up in the months and years ahead. I'm happy to take questions about either of those topics, the loan loss reserve or the average portfolio interest rate. All right. I think that concludes an update on FY23. Any final questions on FY23? Hearing none. We'll skip over, Madam Chair, if you don't mind, we'll go to a core loan programs update.
Yep, go right ahead.
All right. As you all know, the Maryland Resource-Based Industry Financing Funds, otherwise known as the Mr. Biff program, has been our workhorse program for many years. The program we've offered in conjunction with commercial lenders and farm credit associations. Horizon Farm Credit has been our largest lending partner over these many years. Given challenges we were facing on the staffing front and looking at programs offered in 3 other states, you all made a decision at the last meeting in April, which was contemplated at the meeting before that as well, that we would switch the Mr. Biff direct loan program to become a loan participation program. So what does that mean? In a direct loan program, we not only approve, underwrite, and close our own loan. Again, bank would have its loan, we would have our loan, and we would service our loan separately from the bank. And we are always in a subordinate lien position, meaning if there's a liquidation of assets, we lose first. And then the commercial lender would lose if there's any loss remaining after we take any losses. So that's what we've been doing for the last 16 years, quite successfully. A lot of work, tremendous amount of work. We were anticipating some staffing challenges continuing and perhaps becoming even more acute. So looking at what our sister agencies in other states were doing with their loan participation program, they actually partner with commercial lenders to have the commercial lender both close and service the loan on including the portion of the loan provided by the State Agricultural Finance Authority. So in Minnesota, Kentucky, and Iowa, they've been doing this for many years. And so we looked closely at what those 3 states were doing. Each of them were doing essentially the same thing, but a little differently. And there wasn't really a model we could latch onto that was like the perfect way to do it. So what we're developing actually is a blend of all 3 states' programs. So we're inventing a new wheel following the basic model of the lender receiving funds from the State Agricultural Finance Authority, in this case, MARBIDCO, working with our lending partners. And they would be closing and servicing the loan. And what's called a first lien last out scenario. So what we're proposing to do, and we've been working very closely with Horizon Farm Credit on this, and this is what the other states do. All 3 states share the first lien on the real estate that's being offered as collateral. But they are, in 2 of the 3 states, they are contractually subordinate to the senior lender if there is a default and liquidation. So that is the model we're going to be deploying here in Maryland. In Minnesota, they actually share the first lien, what's called pari passu, which means they share the lien equally with no subordination. But we're not doing that because you all made a decision at the last meeting we were going to keep the credit risk same credit and collateral risk profile that we've been using with the direct loan program. And that's what Iowa and Kentucky do today. Now, in all 3 states, they very often have an FSA loan guarantee associated with the loans. We may or may not have FSA loan guarantees associated with our loans because we have a little greater risk tolerance, and we can do higher loan to value loans based on our experience with the direct loan Mr. Biff program. So we are in the final stages of working through some very complicated stuff with Horizon Farm Credit. Horizon actually has its own dedicated loan participation program. It does a lot of partnership lending with other commercial institutions and other farm credit associations in other states. And so they're going to be adding these loans into their portfolio. And then we think Delaware is actually going to pick up on this model and institute for the first time an ag lending loan participation component there as well. So the model we're building here is very likely to be used in Delaware and then potentially even in Virginia. Neither Delaware or Virginia have state ag finance authority. So that's the latest news on the loan participation program. I'm anxious to get it up and running as soon as possible. I've been a little concerned about the delay. We've been advising prospective borrowers to get farm purchase settlement dates extended as far in the future as they can. Many have been able to do that. I suspect we've lost some business over the last couple months, but you know, and then we're not going to get that back. But hopefully we'll be able to catch up. So we were expecting once we open the program that there'll be a small rush of some pent-up demand coming through the door. So that's the latest on the loan participation program. I'm happy to take a question or two about that if anybody has any. We have the 3 other core loan programs. I will note that we are working with the Department of Agriculture through an agribusiness equipment working capital loan program to help bridge fund a manure energy pilot program. So we're pleased to be able to help out in that regard. You all approved that last month. And I think we had just 1 or 2 vineyard planting loans last year and no forestry loans. So that's an update on the core loan programs. And I will move then on to the specialty and core grant programs. I did want to speak specifically about the livestock processing equipment grant program. We received funding last year for the first time from state general funds, $500,000 for a livestock processing equipment grant program. And we recently approved 6 such projects, totaling something under $300,000. You all were provided that information, so we were pleased to do that. We're going to carry over this program and re-announce it early in the fall is our plan. And we hope to make available another $200,000 for loans of up to $50,000 for USDA inspected facilities and $30,000 for custom exempt facilities. So we think that's a useful program. And we also have another $500,000 appropriated this coming fiscal year. And as you're going to see in a minute, I'm proposing that we take all of that and use it as a leverage and as an incentive for our new USDA funded or partially funded livestock processing loan program, which I'll talk about in a minute. I'm going to skip over down to the Urban Ag Lending Incentive Grant Program. The Programs Committee met a couple of weeks ago and talked about a change to this program. Just to refresh your memory, we were part of a consortium that made an application for a $2.5 million USDA land access grant, particularly targeted to small and socially disadvantaged farmers. That was led by Future Harvest CASA. That grant was not funded. And one of the things we wanted to do with that program was to make larger grant funds available for small farms in urban areas purchasing their land. And land in urban areas can be significantly more expensive than land in rural areas. So the committee met and is recommending a couple of changes. One, and this is a program, by the way, that's partially funded by Farm Credit. So they have given us a grant to make these incentive grants for urban farmers, commercial farmers, who are getting a bank loan. And what we're providing is the equity that the bank would normally want to see as part of the project finance. So we've been funding 20% of the project up to $10,000. So these are small loans and small grants, relatively speaking. We're proposing to change the 20% to 25% and up the small grant from 10,000 to 15,000. And then if the project involves actually the purchase of real estate in an urban area, that we could bring as much as $35,000 to the table, which would fund a $140,000 project. We've, over the last few years, only made 5 lending incentive grants. So the program has been somewhat underutilized. We think that making these changes will hopefully allow us to make relatively more lending incentive grants. So that is a recommendation of the Programs Committee. Some of the committee members are on the call here. If they want to make a comment, please do, or this would be a time that would be good for a motion in a second. Everybody understand what I just outlined? We're recommending increasing the lending incentive from 20 to 25%, increasing the grant from 10 to 15,000, and if it's a real estate project, increasing the grant to 35,000.
I move to increase the grants as outlined by Steve.
I second that.
So that was Mark Krebs first, John Jastremski second. I guess there's any discussion? If not, the chair calls for a motion to approve and a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No, the ayes have it. Okay, thank you. There's another item I would like to present to you. Last year, we offered in the fall some farmer cold storage equipment grants. Cold storage has been a need for small farms of all sizes, and particularly smaller farms and urban farms and oyster farmers. And so we offered a $1,000 matching grant last year. So we would provide up to 50% of the cost of an eligible project. Now, some refrigeration projects can run into, $10,000, $15,000 range or more. But we provided $1,000 match last year. We made $17,500 worth of awards, as I recall. We're proposing to have a window of opportunity because we've been getting a number of calls from farmers looking for assistance. So we have proposed, and you'll see it in the budget, that we offer the Farmer Cold Storage Grant Program again this fall with a $2,000 limitation. So we would fund 50% of a project of at least $1,000 in size. So the minimum grant would be $500 and the maximum grant would be $2,000. So that's what we're proposing here. You will see that reflected in the budget. So we can either take it now or you can approve it as part of the budget, whatever your pleasure is. So we can approve offering the Farmer Cold Storage Equipment Grant Program again. We can do that by a motion and second now, or we can just incorporate it into the budget. action. I don't know that it matters
I'll
particularly.
move that we make those changes.
Okay, Sarah has made the motion. We're looking for a second.
I'll second.
That was Charlotte Davis.
And
Any other, just,
there's absolutely no direction here from you, Steve, on this. It really
Oh,
doesn't.
no, yeah, we're recommending that we do this. Yeah, we're prepared to do it. Yeah.
Okay. Call for the question.
okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
All righty. Well, let's move on then to the specialty loan programs. And I've already talked about the Waterlands Microloan Program, which has been really very successful. We used up almost all, but not quite all, the available funding from last year's $500,000 appropriation. The Shellfish Agriculture Program continues to churn along fairly well. The Remote Setting Agriculture Program has not been a terribly well-used program. It's a small program, and the remote setting aspect is also eligible in the other program. So, and the other program is slightly more lucrative. So it's understandable that people would use the other program. And so let me jump down then to the new USDA Meat and Poultry Intermediary Lending Program grant. We talked about this at the February meeting and again at the April meeting. We had applied for a $3.8 million grant to set up a new revolving loan program with special characteristics. And we had proposed to add to that 3.8 million, 1.3 million in MARBIDCO funds in order to make the grant application competitive nationally. And we were right. We came in 16th out of 18. So we got enough points by adding that $1.3 million to get over the hump, as it were. But initially, USDA was only going to give us half of what we asked for, which was a concern. And we decided to try to move forward with, you know, half what we asked for and half of what we were going to commit to the project. But then we were notified about a month or so ago that, yep, they were giving us the whole thing. So now we're back on track for the whole program. So what we need to decide today is the parameters of how we're actually going to launch this new loan program. And as I hinted earlier, what we would like to do is have a major new loan offering available to stand up significantly new capacity for large animal slaughter and blue catfish processing, both of which are USDA inspected. So we're talking about only USDA inspected facilities. We have 18 small to medium-sized large animal processing facilities in the state. And we have, I think we're up to 3 blue catfish processing facilities. We need more processing for blue catfish as new markets are being developed. It's a terribly invasive species that's wreaking havoc in many tributaries of the bay. And so we would like to be able to offer loans between $250,000 and $2.5 million to set up either new facilities, and a new large animal processing facility can easily cost $2.5–3 million, and then also fund significant capacity expansion at existing facilities and new facilities, including in underserved parts of the state. We have no processing facilities on the Lower Eastern Shore, for example. So with that background, and you all, by the way, had previously approved much of what I'm going to present here today, but we had talked about a program with a 4% interest rate, 3 to 12 months interest-only payments being advisable, a 1/4% loan origination fee capped at $5,000. What's a little new, what I proposed, is that we match dollar for dollar up to 10% of the project cost, not to exceed $250,000. So you've got a $2.5 million loan with another $500,000, in this example, another $500,000 in financing as equity. Half of that coming from the borrower, the other half coming from MARBIDCO from our livestock processing grant program, if you follow the logic there. So we're going to take that FY24 livestock processing grant money and use it as an incentive to get people to make major investments in either plant expansion or new facility construction related to large animal processing or blue catfish processing. And so that's what's proposed here. We do want to see with the new facilities, we want to see at least 10% working capital because they're going to need money to hire workers and that sort of thing. And to start out with, we would set an application deadline of September 28th, because we know some things are churning out there. So we want to kind of get everybody working over the next couple months to get their applications together. And then we would review those applications. And this would be assigned under what you had previously approved. It would go to the loan review committee for approval. And then obviously if it's over $300,000, it has to come to you for final approval. We would take the best of those applications if there was more demand than money. And then if there was money available, we would just leave it as an open call after that. We have to manage the USDA money in a special bank account, which we set up. And we've already deposited the MARBIDCO match in this special bank account. And then these loans have to receive USDA approval as well. So they have to have environmental review and stuff for their intermediary lending loans. And they're using their intermediary lending program model for this new revolving loan program that they have now helped to fund. So I'm happy to take questions or comments about anything I just said. So I'm looking for approval to adopt what I sent out to you all in the form of the structure for the program: minimum loan $250,000, maximum loan $2.5 million, up to a 10% incentive grant, matching grant with a cap of $250,000, and the other program parameters: 4% interest rate, a quarter of 1% loan origination fee with a cap of $500,000, and that is it.
I make a motion to approve as presented.
I'll second.
Thank
That
you.
was John first and Mark second.
Correct. Is there any further discussion? Okay, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Okay, we were awarded additional funding by the General Assembly last year for a new program, $1 million, to set up to make loans of up to $250,000 for oyster shucking houses. And there's an interesting wrinkle, well, a couple of interesting wrinkles in the legislation. One is the maximum loan amount, as I mentioned, is $250,000, but no more than $25,000 can be awarded as a loan for each new job created or retained. And so as I've talked to prospective borrowers, they have expressed concern about needing, more than $250,000, but maybe only creating two new jobs or 3 new jobs. And additionally, there's another wrinkle. The oysters that are shucked, the shells can be given to DNR, and the market value of those oysters, because oyster shells sell, and Victoria can confirm this, what are they selling for? $6 a bushel, something like that, right? Just the shell.
The shell, when I buy a shell, it's $7 a bushel right now. Delivered when they're putting raw shell overboard, it's like $8.50.
Okay.
bushel.
So you hear now the market value of just the shells. The shells are in scarce supply and they're an essential ingredient in both oyster aquaculture and in oyster restoration projects. So so the intent of the legislation was to find a way to incentivize keeping more oyster shells in Maryland to go eventually into the Chesapeake Bay in one form or another. So there would be a principal forgiveness or debt forgiveness for each bushel shell returned to DNR. DNR would tell us, you know, how much they've received and what we should credit. I fully anticipate we're going to need to offer supplemental financing from the Agribusiness Equipment and Working Capital Loan Fund to make up the difference for what would be needed. And perhaps the Mr. Biff program could be used too for a very large project. But so I need to get the design for this approved by you today, just the outline of the design. I need to work with DNR and make sure we understand the logistics of how this is going to go. But what I'm going to propose just conceptually for you to adopt today is that we design the loan program, that we offer it this fall, that we obviously have to follow the tenets of the law, right? There's no choice in that. That we charge an interest rate of 3.5% with no loan origination fee. And again, we would have origination fee on our agribusiness equipment loan program, and the interest rate's a little higher in that program. So you'd end up with a blended rate of around 4%. I think would be the more typical scenario we might encounter, because I don't think we're going to be able to make loans which have, you know, 10 new jobs created for $250,000. So I think we're going to have to use other money to, and we have it, to from the corporate side to supplement this funding. So does what I sound resonate with you folks? Can I get a motion and a second to adopt that concept?
I'll move that we adopt it.
Steve Connolly seconds.
Okay, any other questions? All right, hearing none, let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, let me move on now to an update on the Maryland Market Money Program. And just to refresh your memory, at the very beginning of the pandemic, the Maryland Farmers Market Association folded, and its key program, which provides supplemental benefits to Marylanders participating in SNAP, which is the old food stamp program, or WIC, or the Farmers Market Nutrition Program. The Maryland Market Money Program provides supplemental benefits to folks at farmers markets and now at food stands to purchase additional, healthy local food products. And so the SMATIC, the Southern Maryland Ag Development Commission, which is part of the Tri-County Council for Southern Maryland, approached MARBIDCO about joining forces to rescue the program, and we did that. We have been both the statewide governmental sponsor and the fiscal agent for the program up until recently. And a year ago, you all made a decision because there was a need for a 501c3 nonprofit to be created, to have that role shifted over to the nonprofit, which you charged me with setting up, which we did. We established last winter the new Farms and Food Access for a Resilient Maryland Foundation, Incorporated. The acronym is FARMED. So the Farm Foundation became operational first of the year. Board of directors from Farm Credit, Farm Bureau, University of Maryland Extension, Grow and Fortify. So all of our friends in the ag community stepped up to help get this thing going. And we were transitioning things over to the Farm Foundation this spring. And about almost about 4 or 5 weeks ago, we were notified by the Tri-County Council attorney that there was an issue. And the issue is because the Tri-County Council has no legal authority to serve outside of the Southern Maryland counties, it needed a governmental sponsor to serve as the statewide sponsor, fulfilling the role that MARBIDCO had filled. And the key, well, there's two keys. One is it needed to be a governmental entity with statewide jurisdiction. It couldn't just be a nonprofit. And so, you know, I immediately said, yep, MARBIDCO is willing to do that. We actually have one grant with the Montgomery County government for $125,000. It's running through February of the coming year, and no problem. Well, lo and behold, not only did the entity have to be a statewide governmental sponsor, it also had to serve as a fiscal agent. So the role that MARBIDCO had been playing as the fiscal agent that we were assuming Farm was going to play, that couldn't happen. So with about a little more than 2 weeks notice, before the program was going to have to be shut down, or the employees let go, there's 4 employees that run the program at SMATIC, the employees let go and presumably shift over to Farm, which created a lot of work for me trying to figure out how that was going to happen. Kevin Addix, Secretary of Agriculture, got wind of this and said, we're going to do this. We're going to do this for the next year. We're going to step in. We're going to become the statewide governmental sponsor and the fiscal agent for the program. So Steve Conley and his colleague Mark Powell have been very involved with this. I want to thank them for stepping up as well. And so everything is continuing per normal, except that MDA is now assuming the role of the fiscal agent. Farm is continuing in its supporting role as raiser of funds from the private sector. And Farm is also has the contract with Baltimore City government now and is playing some other supporting roles relative to fundraising for the Maryland Market Money Program. So things have changed from when I last reported, but everything is in good shape. And again, I want to thank MDA for stepping up at like the 11th hour to help preserve the program, and it continues to move forward for the next year. Things may change, you know, next year after this. That's still to be determined, but that's the latest on the Maryland Market Money Program. Steve, did I capture everything correctly?
I think you did. It
Okay,
happened pretty quickly.
very good. All right. So moving on then to the next generation programs. Wanted to give you a quick update. And Tina's going to post a summary of the next gen and SANG programs. And Allison, I want to give you a chance to showcase the work that you do.
Okay. Thanks. So I prepared the summary of just the 2 programs. The regular next gen program, we've processed to date 50 applications, approved 49. Looking at closed 40 applications. So that's closed and then pending to close. And we've received termination and releases, meaning that we've been repaid the money we advanced on 9 of those projects. And we've done 2 partial releases. So the money's starting to revolve back into the program, which is good. That's what we hoped for. Acreage preserved and 2P preserved. We are almost at 4,000 acres. And then I also provided a summary just showing like by county of the projects that are closed and to be closed on our books. Moving on to the small acreage, we've processed 8 applications. Of them, 4 have closed, and we have preserved a little over 100 acres on the small acreage farms. And again, it's a summary showing the small acreage program and the counties of where we've done projects and the acreage preserved. Does anyone have any questions on like statistics to date?
I want to thank Allison for the great job she's been doing on this program. It takes a lot of time. She does a great job. She's actually going to be helping some of our newer financial programs officers to help with this program. So I do want to acknowledge that. By the way, Allison has been promoted. She's a program coordinator now for this program, and she's serving as a mentor to the more junior financial programs specialist. So congratulations, Allison. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, any questions for Allison? Tina, you can take that down and put up the other document, please.
Thank you, Allison, for all your support.
The programs committee met recently, as I noted earlier, and they also reviewed a scenario with our original Next Gen program that we wanted to bring to your attention. We are now 5 years in from the original easement option purchase project. And just to recap for you all, with the original Next Gen program, which is designed to overlay the Maryland Ag Land Preservation Foundation program from a structural standpoint. So we generally require that the properties be at least 50 acres in size unless they're already contiguous to preserved land, and which is the basic mouth tenet as to how they work when they purchase a permanent conservation easement. And so we buy an option paying 51% of the fair market value of the land only and bring that money to the settlement table as a large down payment for a qualifying beginning farmer. And that beginning farmer typically has 7 years in the usual scenario to sell the permanent conservation easement to one of the programs that buys permanent conservation easements. And those include the MOUth program, the MDA program, the Rural Legacy program at the Department of Natural Resources, or several of the counties have easement purchase programs. And basically what they're doing, of course, is extinguishing the development rights on those properties with this permanent conservation easement being placed as a deed restriction on the land. So under the agreement that we have with all of the Next Gen option folks is that they can try to sell the permanent easement, hopefully will. They pay us back 51%, the 51% that we advanced at settlement that revolves in the program, and then they also provide another 3% to help cover our administrative costs, and anything above that, they get to keep. So there's an incentive for them to do that. Well, not everybody is going to get an offer from MOUth or Rural Legacy or a county program. And the reason for that is the MOUth program runs on the basis of recommendations coming from the counties and the county ag committees. So both the county government and the county ag committees have input as to who gets recommended for a permanent easement purchase. So, unfortunately, we're going to have some people that just cannot sell the permanent conservation easement. So what happens then is at the end of 7 years, we have the option to buy the permanent easement. We actually exercise that option. We will buy the permanent easement and convey that permanent easement to an agency that administers permanent easements. MARBIDCO only holds temporary easements. We do not have the wherewithal to administer permanent easements. The other agencies I've described do that. So one of the conditions as part of the agreement with these Next Gen folks is that at the end of the 7 years, they're required to pay the closing costs for conveying the permanent easement. And so, and we can bill them for it and illegally go after the folks for those closing costs. We thought it might be both good public relations and also good public policy to enable folks who have reserved either 1 or 2 lots. If the properties are sufficient size and character, the applicants often have the choice to reserve either 1 or 2 lots for future residential development. So we have advanced funds to permanently preserve those lots, but they have to pay us back if they want to exercise those rights. And then through a survey, those lots are actually identified. Well, to incentivize people not to put more houses on their land, we're recommending, and the programs committee agreed, that for folks who decline to exercise their option to put more houses on their lands, that we would pay the closing costs for recording the permanent easement up to $3,000. So that is the recommendation that's before you. And we're going to need a second in motion, and I'm certainly willing to take any questions because I know that's a little bit confusing.
Okay.
Everybody good?
Yeah, Steve, I want to interrupt just a minute. It's Mary. I'm having a trouble with my internet connection. So I think it's best I pass this off to John so that he can continue and not interrupt the meeting.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Mary. John, you have the gavel.
Steve, can you just give us as you said, there was a lot you just said there. Can you just give us a quick, concise summary of what the proposal is again?
Okay, so the bottom line of the proposal is, right now, contractually, every next gen participant is required to pay for the cost, the title work costs of closing the permanent easement. So we're going to hand the permanent easement to Mal for a county or land trust, and there are costs associated with that recordation. It can be anywhere from several hundred to a few $1,000s, and it may well be that there's a survey required in some circumstances, which can be quite costly. So what we're recommending is that if the borrower is willing to give up the additional development rights on the property, for which they would have to pay us back what we advanced on a per acre basis. If they decide, hey, I'm willing to not put 2 more houses on my farm property, that we would just go ahead and pay for the recording costs up to a maximum of $3,000. So we put a cap on it in case, there was a survey needed or some extraordinary costs that we weren't anticipating with recording the permanent easement. Does that make sense, Mark?
Yeah, I think I got it now. Thank you. I'll go ahead and make the motion.
So Marcus made the motion. Is there a second?
Motion is second.
So John, you seconded it?
I did.
Is there discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Ayes have it. All righty, we're making good progress. We're down now, Mr. Chairman, to the project acceptance report. And this is the summary document of 59 projects that have been approved since the last meeting where you approved the projects that have been approved from the meeting before that. So we have 59 projects of all types in a list. And we take a motion and second to get all these projects into the official records. So, Mr. Chair, we're looking for a motion and a second to
Approve the projects.
I second that.
And John seconded it. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 No. Ayes have it. All righty. So now we're up to the FY operating budget, and we are actually a couple minutes ahead of schedule. So you have before you a copy of the proposed FY 24 operating budget. And Tina, I'm wondering, do you have that loan projections chart available? This is the chart that, or the spreadsheet that Mark was asking about.
The loan projections, no, let me find it.
Mark, you'll be interested in this. Just as a refresher, we've used 6 million as basically the number of new loans that we would plan to make every year, recognizing that it could be a little more, a little less. And so we've developed this model, which those of you that have been on the board for a while will recognize. So what we do, sort of looking from left to right, is we take every loan that we have on the books, we discount that by 4%, which is about, almost 2% more than we're going to actually experience in losses, but we're being conservative. We also have included the specialty loans book since we have interest earnings coming from those loans. They're much smaller percentage of loans though. And then we project out $6 million in new loans over on a 15-year amortization using a 3% interest rate, which was closer to the old Mr. Biff direct loan rate. I didn't change it here for this model just to keep it conservative. And then we add that in, as I mentioned, using the 15-year amortization. We not seen here is we projected in our operating expenses starting at 1.35 million in FY24, and that amount increases by 5.25% each year, which is in a normal time about what you would expect. Might be slightly low, but it's not a bad number. So that's the surplus money after interest, after operating expenses are paid. We're going to be receiving fewer loan origination fees, but we do get late payment fees and other things. So we've conservatively said that's $50,000 a year. Mark, here's your early loan payoff number. So over the last 5 years, we've had almost $2.4 million pay off early. So we're taking half of that amount, 1.2 million approximately, and plugging that number in. So we think that's, a good number, maybe not as conservative if you, discounted the big year of last year, but probably not a bad number.
So you say we've been averaging 2.4 million per year.
We've been averaging 2.4 a year, and we took half of that for this.
Gotta have it. Okay, no, I think that sounds pretty conservative to me.
Yeah. So we have all the funds available, and then we have what we're starting out with in the appropriations column. So we're receiving the 2.3 million in our second to last year of our core programs funding. Plus we got an extra $6 million because of the heavy demand in our Mr. Biff program. We were able to convince the General Assembly to give us an extra $6 million, which was pretty easy for them to do because we had a special $10 million appropriation for the Next Generation program. So we didn't need $10 million next year in Next Generation. We didn't really need exactly $4 million immediately. We're going to need it eventually, but not next year. So we said, let us take 6 of the 10 and leave 4 for Next Gen to use in our core program. And the General Assembly, due to the leadership of Subcommittee Chair Mark Corman and Senator Sarah Elfreth, who's the Subcommittee Chair in the Senate, they said, fine, we'll go ahead and accommodate that. So we have 8.3 million in new appropriations, and we have just under 3 million in funds we're carrying over that are available for core loans. So that gives us, 10.6 million in, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, that gives us 10.6 million together with other funds that we have for a total of $14 million that's available, but we're not going to need 14. We're going to need 11.1. You have 11.175 in the operating budget that's before you. So I put 11.1. I forgot to put the other 75,000 in, but it's a model. So you can see there that between now, where we are between now and fiscal 2030. So we have to be self-sustaining with our core programs after fiscal 25. So we have one more year after this year of $2.3 million. And you see that reflected in the fiscal 25 line in the appropriations column. So that's giving us a projection through fiscal 27. We have enough money to fund $6 million a year in new loans without any problem, according to this model, which is, we think, on the conservative side. And then we could come up as much as $1.7 million short by fiscal 2030. But frankly, that's kind of in the margin of error, that far out with this model. So I think we can reasonably say, with prudent management and not giving away too much money in new core grants, that we should be self-sustaining. And if you look at the column fourth from the right that says less incentive grants and other special non-recovery expenses, I've included 230,000 in core program grants in the operating budget, but I'm cutting that down to 140,000 a year thereafter in this model. So, and we've always talked about this. It may be that we just give away less money when we're cut off from new core program appropriation. So are there any questions about the model and what it suggests? The model says we're fine until fiscal 27, and theoretically we might come up a little short after that, but it's not by a huge amount. And as many of you know, we do have a $4 million line of credit with CoBank that we could tap. Not that we would want to tap and use it for extended periods, but we can certainly cover any temporary shortfalls with the line of credit we have if we needed to in the out years. But I think we're certainly good for the next 3 years or 4 years. So I think we have to say we're going to be self-sustaining.
I think that looks good. And we could always temper the loans towards 4 years out or 5 years out if we have to. My concern is it seems like the workload compounds considerably based on all the new work coming in the old loan repayment programs. So are you building into these projections increased exponential administrative costs?
I am projecting status quo on numbers of staff, and here's why. We have 143 open Mr. Biff loan accounts, and we have some small number of other core loans, collateralized loans, that have to be serviced. All of those Mr. Biff loans, or nearly all of them, have a 10-year balloon feature. So at the end of the 10th year, they have to either repay the principal balance due or refinance, or if they really are having trouble, then we extend the term. But the majority of them will be paid off within 10 years. So we're going to need loan servicing staff for the next few years, but for the Mr. Biff program, which is now going to become a loan participation program, where we're shifting the loan servicing burden to the participating banks, our workload over time will be diminishing post-loan closing. It's not going to be immediate. It's not going to be even the next 2 years. But, 5 years from now and later, the loan servicing work should be diminishing, if that makes sense. So,
Thanks for clarifying, Steve.
yeah, right. Now, but the General Assembly keeps giving us new programs, right? So we can typically keep around 7% of the appropriations we're getting to cover our admin costs. So I am cognizant of the fact that as we add new programs, somebody's got to administer them. So we will have to recognize that in putting together our budgets, but presumably there would be a revenue stream associated with the new program. So we would take that into account. I think you can take this down unless there are further questions. All right, now going to the FY24 summary budget there. We are projecting, and I can't see it because my computer has a thing over top of it. So we have $1.6 million in carryover money that I couldn't read coming over from next year in the budget. We have the $8.3 million in core programs appropriations, which I described previously. We have a continuation of the $435,000 in the aggregation program. And by the way, I sent you all an announcement yesterday from MDA. MDA is getting a $3.8 million grant to assist particularly small and disadvantaged farmers with all manner of food aggregation support and whatnot. So been having informal conversations with staff at the department about perhaps leveraging some of this money in a way that advantages certified local farm enterprises and the state's efforts around procurement of local food. So stay tuned for that. And I'll give Steve a chance at the end to comment on that program. They have a listening session coming up soon on that. We've got, and this is what we project that's already booked. We have just over $2 million in loan principal repayments coming in. We have, in terms of restricted repayments, $335,000 coming in. This is the book number, and we're going to stick with this because it's been a pretty good number, $1.352 million in interest income. And this again goes to support our operating income. That's the blue figures there below the total income line, which that's a very important number and line for you to be aware of, by the way. So going into operating income is interest income from loan, program income, which we budgeted at $75,000. You remember from the spreadsheet I just gave you, I used $50,000 in that model. Then we have the next generation appropriation of $800,000. I'm sorry, not the appropriation is $4 million, excuse me. And the repayment money is $800,000. So that's money flowing back from the original easement option purchases that we made previously. And we have some miscellaneous other income of $12,000. And then we have three $500,000 grants and one $1 million grant in that last income line. So the $1 million is the new oyster shucking house loan program, We have the $500,000 for the Waterman's Micro Loan Program. We have $500,000 for the WIPI program. That's the Wood Product Industry Equity Investment Grant Program, which we are going to continue to offer as we have last year as a plan. And also the $500,000 for the livestock processing grant, which you all have just directed those funds to go to incentivize folks to make major capacity enhancements to their processing facilities or stand up new ones with a combination of grant and loan funds. So that is the projected income for the year, coming in at $21.4 million. And then this operating income line, that's very important because as the loan principal comes back, we revolve that in the loan programs, right? So we don't count that as operating income. We want to fund operations from loan interest earnings and from other programmatic activity like late fees and loan origination fees and things like that. So we're projecting 1.7 million coming in as operating income. And then if you go down to the bottom line of the operational expenditures at 1.6 million, you see that the 1.7 exceeds 1.6. So that's really what you're looking at, because you want to make sure you have enough operating income to cover your operational expenditures plus whatever you have in the core grant line, which today is $230,000. So that means we're the difference there of about $100,000, we're going to be subsidizing from our appropriation to fund the core grants with what's budgeted here. So looking at the operating expenditures, we talked previously about well, the office operations are just a small increase. Personnel is increased, but we're going to be fully staffed this year. And I've built in a little extra money in case we get a chance to bring on some really experienced commercial underwriting capability. Might need that. And so I've budgeted a little money for that if we're able to acquire that talent. But right now, we've got 10 staff, and I feel very good with where we are with the staffing right now, as I pointed out at the beginning of the meeting. Contractual services, including legal, is budgeted close to what we actually had in expenditures last year. Transaction expenses is the same budgeted amount basically as last year. We've upped the outreach, promotion, travel, and training budget a little bit. We had more sponsorships last year. We did a lot more advertising last year, so we'll probably keep that up. So that's the difference there. And then we have about $10,000 in miscellaneous operational expenses listed there. So that's it on the operational expenditure side. And then on the programmatic side, we're budgeting about $10 million for the Mr. Biff Loan Participation Program. We had been doing $1 million a month prior to May. I don't know that we'll keep that up for the entire rest of the fiscal year once the new program opens up again. So we budgeted 10 million there for the Mr. Biff program. We budgeted 625,000 for the agribusiness equipment program, and then 275,000 for forestry equipment and the Maryland Vineyard Hop Yard Orchard Planning Program. The same numbers as prior years. In terms of the specialty lending, overall, we've budgeted a total of $2.2 million, which breaks down with all of the remaining money we have in the special rural business energy efficiency loan improvement program. We do about one loan every other year or so. And so that money revolves. We had a $100,000 grant from the Maryland Energy Administration about 15 years ago, and It just revolves. The maximum loan amount's 30,000. So we have that as an open program. We're budgeting 560,000 for the shellfish aquaculture program. We had 360,000 in expenditures last year in that program. We're budgeting 34,000 for the remote setting program. We had 60,000 last year. We have some funds budgeted for the Southern Maryland revolving loan program for agriculture that's funded by SMATIC. Those are max $20,000 unsecured loans that we offer in Southern Maryland. I think we did one last year, but we do about one a year in that program. And then the Waterman's micro loan program, which has proven to be quite popular. And we will just keep that program going. The law specifies that the loan amounts must be between $7,500 and $15,000. So we have no discretion to the amount of the loan amounts there. It's what the statute requires. So that's it for the specialty loans. In terms of the specialty grants, we're budgeting $2.375 million, which includes some equity incentive money that we get from the Upper Shore Regional Council and SMATIC in Southern Maryland. We are able to offer equity incentive grants with any loans that we make in those programs in those 8 counties. And that's a nice incentive for people seeking financing from us. We mentioned the livestock processing grants. So we're going to carry over last year's money and offer those again as those $30,000 to $50,000 grants as I described earlier. And then we have the remaining of the money, the new money to go as a companion to the new loan program. The WIPI program, as we affectionately call it, that's the Wood Product Industry Equity Investment Fund. We budgeted $588,000, which includes a little carryover money from last year for that. And then the local food aggregation projects, we're budgeting $1,028,000, which includes the new appropriation plus some carryover money that we've had from prior year. So that's it on the specialty grant programs. And then finally, or next to finally, the core grants, we're budgeting $200,000 for the core grants. And these include $50,000 for the Urban Ag Lending Incentive Grant Program that we talked about earlier. It includes $45,000 in USDA value-added producer matching grants. So 45,000. We again, we had 7,400 in expenditure last year, not 5,400. Apologize for that mistake I mentioned earlier. We've got $45,000 in the cold storage grant budget. We've got 40,000 in local government cost share grants. That program kind of runs hot and cold. Howard County was very active at one point. Didn't get many requests last year. Montgomery County's been very active in prior years, and we had a few requests. You might even request, they actually asked us to increase the allocation for the individual counties last year to 35,000 from 25,000, which we did. But their demand has fallen off there. So we've budgeted 40,000 and see how far that takes us. We budgeted funding for the Maryland Farm and Harvest TV series that Maryland Public Television produces. It's a very popular program. We think it's money well invested. So we've included that again. And then we've included $15,000 for the Future Harvest Beginning Farmer Graduate Grants. Those are the $1,000 grants in the first year. And then we follow those small farmers who are just typically beginning their operations. We give them $7,500 in the second year and $500 in the third year. And we get reports from them how they're doing. So we think it's a good use of a small amount of money to incentivize small farmers in getting and continuing their agricultural enterprises. So that is the core grants. And then finally, the Next Gen program, we're budgeting $3.2 million for the Next Gen program and $630,000 for the SANG program for a total of $3.8 million. So we have about 19 0.8 million in program expenditures and you add in the operational expenditures, we're right at 21,441,000 as the budget plan. That's a lot of information. I'm happy to take any questions.
Can you tell me again one more time the operating income of 1,000,007? That's mostly the interest.
Yeah, so if you look at,
What's the other piece?
okay, so you got interest income from loans, program income, and other income.
And were those components also listed separately on the top of this?
No,
page?
no, we just,
Okay.
the Excel formula picks it up.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, thank you.
So that is the proposed budget for the next year. We need a motion and a second.
I'll make the motion. Mark?
Steve Conley, second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed,
Aye.
no. The ayes have it. Thank you very much. So, skipping down now to miscellaneous updates. I did want to tell you that the Food System Resiliency Council continues to demand a lot of my time. The council itself meets no more than quarterly now, but the council has three subcommittees, or three committees actually. I serve on two of them. One of them meets every other week religiously. And so it keeps me busy. I think the council's doing some interesting work. A lot of it is focused on food distribution issues, which are not really in MARBIDCO's mission space, but they do get into agricultural production matters. And so it's important that production ag in all its facets be represented. And Mark Powell and myself, and there's a couple of farmer reps and at least one county ag development officer serving on the subcommittee. So we had a very interesting field tour in Caroline County. The school system over there has been quite innovative in not only producing food for the school kids, but in developing ancillary services for processing food for purchased by local citizens and getting food out to needy Caroline County folks. And they've actually been quite involved in promoting blue catfish processing. So it's been quite an interesting experience. Beth Brewster is the food system manager over there, and she's just a real dynamo. So we spent a day over there a couple weeks ago. So that's what's going on with the Food System Resiliency Council. Steve, I wanted to give you a chance to talk about your $3.8 million grant if you wanted to say anything about it.
Well, sure. Thanks, Steve. So this grant is to really help the food distribution system, but on the front end, USDA's asked us to take to hold a listening session and also do a survey so we can get meaningful feedback from the community. So we do have, I believe Steve sent a press release that we put out this week to everybody on the board. So if you or know someone that could possibly benefit or has ideas, please ask them to go and complete the survey. It's not a very long survey. It's about 3 pages. I don't think it'll take very long. And also we'll have a listening session coming up on July 21st, I think is the date. Want to hear from people in the food industry and the food producers and also the people that are concerned about the issue, so that we have selected priorities properly for how to distribute the grant dollars.
Very good. Questions for Steve? All righty. Well, we're getting near the end. We did want to tell you that we will use the doodle poll for selecting the fall meeting. We'll probably meet in the October timeframe. Hopefully we can find a date. It's important for us to have a quorum now for these meetings, so we will endeavor to find a date that works for everybody. There's an opportunity for anyone to ask any additional questions of the staff or to share any announcements or information that you would want other members to know.
Well, I'd like to thank the staff for all their hard work. I know we do this all the time, but it's amazing what you all have accomplished over the last 2 years through COVID and how much MARBIDCO has changed and grown over the last 5 years or so. It's just phenomenal.
Well, on behalf of the staff, I want to thank you for that comment, John, and we just have a terrific team here. I personally couldn't be more blessed to work with the people I work with, so, and to work with you all who have been so supportive.
Steve, can I say something real quick?
You may. We'd love to hear from you.
I would like to thank MARBIDCO personally because I would not have the business I have today without MARBIDCO. I was one of the first people that took out 2 loans for the aquaculture business and an equipment loan, which have all been paid back. But it is a wonderful program for people that want to get into a business. I just want to thank all the staff there, all the previous staff. It is a very good program, and it just needs to, more people need to know about it. So, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of your board.
Well, we're so delighted we're selected by Governor Moore to represent the seafood industry. We're very pleased. All right. Well, thank you for those nice comments, everyone. And we do have a little extra money in the advertising budget, so we will continue to get the word out. So unless there's nothing else for the open session, Mr. Chairman, we're going now to the motion to go into a closed session pursuant to the applicable provisions of the general provisions article of the annotated code. And there's a motion there that somebody can read.
I make the motion to move into closed session pursuant to the applicable provisions of the general provisions article of the annotated code of Maryland.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Okay, so we're going to go into closed session.